What happens when your worst fear becomes your reality? Hi, I'm Brent Cassidy. Welcome to the Nightmare Success In and Out podcast, where we explore how to overcome your fears and nightmares to set yourself free. We're going to be exploring this topic with guys I was in Leavenworth with and others who survived their own nightmare. These stories can be inspiring, sometimes sad. There's some humor, but hopefully you can come away with a nugget of something that'll help you knock down some of the prisons you built up in your own mind. All right, welcome back, Nightmare Success In and Out listeners. It's where you come for what happens when your worst fear becomes your reality. How do you adapt, survive, overcome, set yourself free? Okay, so if you're all playing the board game at home, we did a part one here with Jay Jordan. So if you haven't heard part one with Jay Jordan, you got to check it out. And it's the first time I've done a part 1 and 2, but I really thought we needed to do it because there's so much that happens in Jay's life up until the time he's in solitary confinement for 2 years, and then all the reentry stuff that Jay does after he gets out. I want to reintroduce again because Jay Jordan has been out of prison since about 2012, I think. But, man, he has done nothing but just being a doer since he got out. He doesn't just talk about problems. He goes out and solves them. And what I mean by that, he's the co-founder of Time Done. And Time Done is all about, man, when you get out, it should be over. That should be your end date. It should be over. You shouldn't be living a life sentence for the rest of your life because you did your time. So he's doing all kinds of good stuff with Time Done, and he's got a passion behind it. He's also CEO of Alliance for Safety and Justice, where he's passed over 100 new laws in the last 10 years. 100 new laws. I mean, that is incredible. I mean, I don't even know where to start from. But one of the things that he just got passed in California is all about, if you don't reoffend, I think it's 3 or 4 years, you can get your record sealed. And it's affected hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people, and it needs to be all over the nation. It's such a important thing. And how he got it done, he's going to talk about, because I don't know how you get these things done. It's all about reentry. He's affecting justice-impacted people getting back into society, being able to live their lives once they've done their time. If you want to go follow this guy, last I looked, he's got like over 1 million followers on Instagram. It's at Mr. J Jordan. Check him out. He's always got something going on. He's always working out. The guy's in pretty good shape. He's in pretty good shape. Before we jump into all that, I want to recognize our show sponsor. You know, who likes spending a couple of weekends walking the car lots looking for a car? Nobody likes to do that. Then you spend 4 or 5 hours in the dealership to buy a car. It's kind of like a trip to the dentist. Well, there's a better way to take away all the pain and hassle of getting a car. It's called Autoplaza Direct. They are your personal car concierge. Just tell them the car you want, what you can pay, and they'll go find that car for you. They will negotiate your best price. Nobody likes to do that. It's always a hassle. They also offer warranties and financing. It's full service. Go to autoplazadirect.com to get started with your personal car concierge. The new hassle-free way, the car buying experience you deserve. Autoplaza Direct. Tell them Brent from Nightmare Success sent you. All right, Jay Jordan, we're back. We are back. Okay, so when we left, we were talking about a Jay Jordan that had been in solitary for 2 years, and there was a spark that was lit for you, and it changed the way that you saw the world, and it was more about who am I and what can I be, and you discovered that all of it was inside you. All you needed to do was feed it, and you started feeding and just delving in and sucking up information of history, politics, and movements, and all these things, along with business and business plans, and giving people stock tips and all this stuff. And your mom's sending you reams and reams and reams of information, and you're just turning into this wizard in the cell. So that's where we left off. So, Jay, what happens? What happens once you start doing that?
Yeah. Part 1 was definitely like the origin story. I think part 2 here is going to be about like what we did with everything that we learned. So, mind you, I had 2 strikes, and I was in the hole, in solitary confinement. I was found guilty of an administrative infraction inside prison, and they put me in the hole.
Well, as you explained, Jay, you entered into a world where there was a war going on in the prison, and that's wars are good, but they're really not good in prison.
Yeah, they're definitely not good in prison because you can't run from them.
Right.
There's no draft dodging. There's no. I don't want to.
There's nowhere to go.
Yeah, you were in it, whether you like it or not. And if it's a race war, which a lot of them are, you don't even have to be involved at all. You are in it. You go to that yard. If you're white, black, Latino, whatever you are, and you're butting up against another faction, you have no choice. And so for folks on the streets who don't really understand how prison works and how riots work, is a lot of them, especially in California and a lot of other states, it's race based.
Right.
And you don't choose to, go in there and not talk to a different race. That's just the way it is. And so if a problem happens between races, you're going to be involved by the nature of just the color of your skin. So prison is very primitive in that regard. A lot of other regards. So I got caught up in that. Went to the shoe because the prison I was at was, it was a level 3, but it was rocking and rolling. And I went to the shoe for 2 years, solitary. SHU is an acronym for segregated housing unit. It's where you do your long-term segregation, and that's where I went. And I was in there, and mind you, I had 2 strikes, and so not understanding or not knowing if I was going to get struck out because of what happened, because they can strike you out while in prison.
And then what happens, Jay? Let everybody know what does it mean when you get 3 strikes?
Yeah, it means you got life, 25 years of life, right?
Life.
So I went in there with 7 years, and here I am now facing life inside prison for something I didn't really do. I didn't do anything. Somebody else did something, and I wasn't named in it.
And we might explain, because for those who might not have caught it on the first part 1, your plea deal gave you 2 strikes. You really should have gotten 1 strike. Because of the plea deal, they gave you 2 strikes so that you got less time. If you would have taken 1 strike, you would have gotten more or less double the time. So you manufactured an extra strike.
Yeah, which is insane, right? You would think that, a crime and then the time corresponding with that. Just a side note, a sidebar for people who don't understand where we get these time lengths. They are pulled out of the air, right? It's like, there's no robbery should be 4, someone should serve 4 years for robbery because after 4 years, a robber is somehow rehabilitated. There's no social science tied to the length of time someone has to do because of the crime.
Well, I'll give you an example, Jay. Because my crime was in the financial world, and so we were in a family business. And once they deem this enterprise is wrong, then they can take wire fraud, they can take mail fraud, they can take money laundering. All they do is stack them. So however many times you've been in business for 30 years, how many times you put something in the mail? A lot. How many times you make a wire fraud or a wire transfer? A lot. If you bought anything because they deemed it, a lot. When I was trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life, I drunkenly got a bottle of vodka out and started looking at my charges. I was looking at 922 years, or I could plea. So they stack those things so much into a world, whether you're talking about state or federal, that, you talk about why did 97% of the people plea when they're indicted. There's a lot of reasons. And there's chapter, verse, book. It's not personal. They get what they want out of the deal. And there are people that go to court and to trial, and they don't seem to be very successful either.
Yeah, especially in the feds, man. The feds have the 99.9%.
There's one of the guys, Jason Rosselbach, was on, and he said it's kind of like your beer softball league gets to play the LA Dodgers.
Exactly. You're not going to win. You're not going to win, man. You're not going to win. And so that's I was in that position. I had an attorney, but it was just like, hey, we're going to give you, if you go to trial, you get 38 years of life. So just look at the time difference. If I lose in trial, 38 years to life, right? But if you take this deal, you take 13 years with 1 strike, or we'll give you 2 strikes and 7 years. That didn't make any sense to me, and that is kind of the underlying reason why a lot of people want to reform the system, because they're like, it's not rooted in any truth or fact or social science or evidence, empirical knowledge or evidence that the time you're giving people actually translates into, lack of criminality or low recidivism rate.
Right.
It does not at all. Right. So here I am in the hole, 2 strikes, facing the third one. And like you said, I had a revelation because my neighbor knocked on the door and knocked on my wall and asked me who I was. I couldn't really answer the question. I went into this whole process of becoming very introspective and questioning everything. I was kind of like Buddha hopping over the wall and trying to figure out, who I am in the world. And that was my journey. My journey was, not external, but more internal.
Yeah.
And, everything that I've ever been told, I begin to question. Every question that, I've had about the world, I began to try to find an answer to. And, I was finding answers by cross-referencing, thanks to my mother who would send me reams of information off the internet. I would, I had an appetite for knowledge. And that appetite was literally locked up for years and years and years. And it was kind of locked away because I was just had this idea that I had to be this thing that the world was telling me I needed to be. Right. And I was telling myself I needed to be. And I realized that none of that was true. I didn't have to be a Crip. I didn't have to be this tough gang-banging guy. I didn't have to be so aggressive and so, kind of misogynistic and had all these things. Like, I didn't have to be that, And when I realized that, it was the weight off my shoulders. And I became like this academic researcher, So I just wanted to know everything. And I created a plan. I said, hey, I'm getting out because I had found out that, they didn't file charges. And so I knew I was going home eventually. And I had to create a plan. And I had these ideas to make money. I said, hey, I can't get out and not make money because that was the reason why I got myself in here in the first place.
Exactly.
I felt like I needed to make money before I moved out of Stockton. And I ended up robbing somebody and, it didn't work out well. So I said, I need money. I need some way to sustain myself. And I created a plan. I was going to sell real estate. I was going to sell insurance, life insurance, because I've seen a lot of people dying from where I'm from in Stockton, California. And, I've seen all these, my mom used to send me all these different things of folks dying. And all these used to tell me, oh, we're paying for flights and we're paying for funerals. And I'm like, people don't have life insurance? Yeah. I said, great, I can sell people life insurance. I could provide life insurance. I want to sell real estate because at the time I was in there, mind you, it was a real estate crisis. And I saw the prices was going crazy. I'm like, it's an opportunity, right? You make money in a down market. You don't make money in an up market. You make money in a down market. And so I said, it's the perfect opportunity for me to hop in and tell people you need to buy now for prices to shoot up. And I wanted to sell used cars. I always had a passion for taking the old and fixing it up and, selling it to someone else. So I wanted to do these 3 things. And I wanted to do it out of a barbershop because in the prison, I couldn't, I wasn't programming, I was politicking, right? So I used to cut hair, and that's how I was going to do this. And I had literally down to the budget. I wrote out budgets, and I had the whole thing set up, and I sent all this stuff to my sisters just in case they would come in there and take it. I didn't want them to take it, so I sent her all this stuff, and I said, hey, let's start a vending machine company. She's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, and all this is through correspondence. And I said, I have money in my book. I'll send you the money, and let's start a vending machine company. Well, when I got out the hole, we started the vending machine company
while you were in prison.
While I was in there, and so this was the beginning of me having agency over my situation.
Yes.
Before I didn't have agency because I was listening to everything else people were telling me. I was in my own head about external forces. When I had agency over my body and my thoughts, I'm like, oh, I can do anything. No one can stop me. So I started with one. I found this guy, Leo, and through the classifieds, he was selling vending machines. And I remember talking to Leo on a 3-way. I'm on the prison phone on the 3-way. My sister's on the phone. And I'm like, hey, man, you have to hurry up. I just want the guy to hear my voice, and you can take it from here. So I call Leo, and, on 3-way, I had like 30 to 45 seconds before, this is a collect call from prison. So I'm like,
that's a deal breaker.
I'm like, hey, Leo, this is Jay. I'm on a boat right now, but I wanted you to hear my voice. I want to buy your machine. My sister's going to take it from here. Really appreciate you. And I'll hang up, right? And Leo sells my sister the vending machine, and that was the first one. And she placed it at my brother's place of business, which was a concrete plant, way out in the boonies.
Right.
So they had to use the vending machine because in Stockton it gets really, really hot.
Mm-hmm.
And I was selling 50-cent sodas. This was back in 09, 010, right?
Yeah.
Well, in 2010, I was selling 50-cent sodas, ice cold sodas, grape sodas, strawberry sodas. Just imagine, it was so good. And the machines would sell out all the time. And I have to tell my sister, keep up with the book. So that was machine number one. I bought another machine after I saving up the money from that machine. And so I had two machines. So I'm like, you know what? This is going to be a thing when I get out. Mm-hmm. And I finally got a hold of, a cell phone because in prison they had cell phones. Mm-hmm. So I'm calling Leo from a 305 number, which is Miami, and he's in the Bay Area. He was in Livermore. And he's like, it's a 305 number. Jay, where are you? And I'm like, well, I'm on vacation.
On a long vacation.
But I promise you, in about a year, we'll meet up.
I'll be back.
Yeah. I think I bought two or three machines from Leo while incarcerated. And these machines are placed. And the day I get out, I'm ready. I'm ready. I had all my plans. I had everything set up in my head, at least, what I was going to do. I knew exactly where to go to file for my insurance license, the classes, the real estate classes, right? I knew I had to go to cosmetology school to get my barber license. I knew all of that. And the first place I went, before I even went home, I went to Big Herc's shop. Oh. He was my longtime barber. And I'm like, I'm going straight to the money. I'm going straight for it. I don't want to even go home first. Yeah. I made a detour to Big Herc's shop. And Big Herc's like, Jay, what are you doing? I thought you were in prison. I'm like, I'm out. Cut my hair. So I'm in the chair, and I'm talking a million miles a minute. I'm like, Herc, I got a plan. And I got out when I was 26. I'm like, Herc, I got a plan. I'm going to sell insurance and real estate and use cars. I'm doing all of a barbershop. And what I need from you is I need you to hire me. Just give me a chair. And he's like, yeah, for sure. He's like, anything. He said, wait a minute. You got felonies, man. You can't get your barber license. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Yeah. He's like, you cannot get your cosmetology license with a felony. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. And that was my first kind of gut punch. It was like, oh, this is going to be different. This is going to be different. Yeah. Yeah. And so when I have pictures of me going home and eating, and all my family was there, and one of my mentors, Billy Johnson, was there. And there's a look on my face, and I remember that moment where I'm eating, and I'm like, the word Big Herc was telling me was ringing through my head. And everyone else is having fun. They're like, oh my God, he's home. They're talking. It's a joyous event. It's like the baby of the family's home after so many years, almost a decade. And I'm just thinking what Big Herc said, you got felonies. I'm like, this is bothering me. This is really, really bothering me. So I go through the motions, and I couldn't really enjoy myself. I mean, I'm happy. Sure. I couldn't really enjoy myself because I'm more excited about proving everyone that believed in me right and proving everyone that didn't believe in me wrong. Mm-hmm. So those are my two goals. Like, I'm going to do this. And I was my main cheerleader. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to prove myself right that I'm not this person that, everyone said I was, And I remember the first thing in the morning, I got me a phone. And this was, because when I left, we had Metro PCS phones. It wasn't, and I had access to a phone every now and then in prison. So I kind of knew the evolution, but it wasn't like we had, getting out in 2012. Yeah. So I get a phone and I get on the internet. And I'm like, can I get a insurance license with a felony? Boom, second gut punch. Real estate license, boom, third gut punch. Used car, boom, fourth gut punch. And I'm like, okay, what am I going to do, right? If I spent the last 2 to 3 years crafting this huge plan to really show value and inject value into my community by doing these things, by bringing value in other people's lives. People need life insurance. I can provide that. I can be that bridge. Right. People need to buy homes. I want to make sure that folks ride this wave up because prices are low. I want all the people I know that have money and jobs to buy real estate. I want to help facilitate that, be a bridge, right? I want to bring joy by cutting people's hair. Every guy knows before you walk into the barbershop and after you walk out of the barbershop, those are two different guys, right? Yeah. Walking in, walking out, two different guys. I wanted to be a part of that transformation. None of that was true. Second day I was out, none of it was true. So what do? I said, okay, you know, it's that there's a saying that says, go for the one bird in the hand instead of two in the bush, right? And the one bird I had in my hand was my vending machine. So I went back to my old pen and piece of paper, and I started writing down, because vending machines were secondary for me. It was a prison thing.
Sure.
It wasn't really like my main.
It wasn't on your big business plan.
Right? So I said, you know what? Now let's move all this other stuff. I'm not going to cry about it. I'm going to go big on vending machines. I'm going bull on vending machines. I became very bullish on vending machines. And my dad's like, so what are you going to do? And, you know, I tell my dad what happened. And I made it a point to never show my family when I was down. I've always been like insanely optimistic. And so I was like, hey, Dad, remember the plan I've been telling you about? We can't do the plan. But I got another plan. He's like, okay. And he's been really supportive throughout this whole process of me with these big, lofty goals. And he's like, go for it, son. So I went for it. And he's like, just go bullish on vending machines.
Yeah.
To my sister, I'm sitting there trying to figure out, you know, what is my big bet? How can I slingshot to like massive adoption of vending machines?
How do you scale this thing big?
Yeah. Right? And so I go with my sister. I'm in the car with her. She's like, come to CrossFit with me. She's like, you're in shape. Come to CrossFit. I don't know anything about CrossFit. Shout out to the CrossFit community. They are insane. It is a cult. It is a cult. CrossFit is a cult. I am convinced. So I go to Gabe. He has 209 CrossFit. And I walk in there, and they are doing dumbbells and kettlebells and snatches and hanging from upside down, doing upside down handstand push-ups. I'm like, what is this place? They're practicing for the circuit. So, you know, I walk in there, and I'm like, I'm not doing this. This is too crazy. I'm neurotic, but I'm not that neurotic. And they're like eating this weird food and drinking coconut. I never even heard of coconut water. I'm like, coconut water? I'm like, how much did that stuff cost? They're like $5. I'm like, are you kidding me? So you know me, I go back and do my research. What is the bulk price of coconut water? Right? What is the bulk price of what is their diet called? Paleo, right? What are the paleo products? Yeah, the paleo products. And bulk price, the margins on that stuff is huge, right? We're talking about I can get a case of coconut water for like $2 a unit. And they're selling for $5. That is insane profit margin.
Wow.
I'm like, CrossFit. I Googled how many CrossFit gyms are there in California. There are dozens of CrossFit. Over 100. I'm like, here we go. Here goes the scale. Yep. I go to Gabe. I said, Gabe, you need a vending machine in here. And I made all these concessions, which I learned a lot about making concessions on the front end because you're excited about business opportunities. Sure. And he was like, yeah, sure, put one in here. First one. I said, will you introduce me to all the CrossFit gyms in that you know? He's like, yeah. Introduced me to like 3 or 4, got those contracts, and then I got good. I said, well, I don't have the money to buy the machines, but what if I get the contracts, right? And then find a business partner to fund the machines if I get the contracts. Can I have the contract, right? And I can show them what
it's all about sales, yep.
I started getting contracts left and right, up and down the state of California, and it became, we scaled from 4 machines to 102 in like 8 months.
Wow.
Yeah. So I got to work, and I ended up getting a business partner. And he said, hey man, if you keep getting these contracts, I'll put up the money because this is golden. And Leo was telling me, Jay, build your route and then sell the route, right? So if your machine makes $1,000 a month, that's $12,000 a year. You can double it. So that one machine you can sell for $24,000 a year. If you have 100 machines, that's what you can sell the route for. And I'm like, I'm doing the math. Here goes my big bet, right? Here goes my scale. And me and my business partner built that business. But simultaneously, while I was doing that, I had to find a regular job because my parole officer didn't care about the vending machines. He was like, that's not real. I'm like, it is real.
Yeah.
Look at this bag of money.
Yeah.
These dollars
really
add up.
happening. Right.
Yeah. And he says, no, you need to either go to school or get a job. So I signed up to be an alcohol and substance abuse counselor, this accelerated course, about 12-week course. Got halfway through the course, didn't really like it, didn't really like the deficit-based framing they were using.
Mm-hmm.
It was all around like, just things I didn't want to do. It was more singular. I wanted to fix problems. My mind has always been like kind of an alchemist. I want to turn something, regular or bad into something good. And it just wasn't for me. And then I had to get a job, but no one would hire me. Like literally no one would hire me with a felony. So I went to a temp agency and started to work in his warehouse during the swing shift. So from 6 p.m. to 2 in the morning, I would work my job, and then I would wake up at 6 a.m., 7 a.m., work out, and then go do my vending machines, and then go to work. So I was like busy.
Wow.
But then I got pulled into community work by default. One of my dad's closest colleagues, Billy Johnson, who was an ex-skinhead. He had a big old swastika on the back of his head. He grew his hair out. He was old. They called him Papa Bill. He was an old shot caller. He befriended my dad, and he was like, "Hey, can you show my son the ropes about community work when you get out?" And he was like, "Yeah." So I used to talk to him a lot around. I used to tell him about me being discouraged, and he was the only one that I would let on. Like, "Hey, I'm getting a little bit discouraged."
Yeah.
And he would be like, "I don't give a fuck," you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
you go for it. Like, you go for it. Don't let that stop you, at all. And he used to give me the motivation. He since passed, but he used to give me the motivation to keep going. And he pulled me into this thing called Beyond Incarceration. So I'm doing the vending machines. I'm working, the swing shift in a freezer at Trader Joe's warehouse, way out there in the boonies in Stockton. Mm-hmm. And then I'm pulled into this Beyond Incarceration where I'm going to talk to kids about, the gateway drugs and,
mm-hmm.
Like prison. And, that really exposed me to kind of the systematic stuff that I got into later on. Because I would stand next to like the chief of police and sheriffs and DAs, and they had live screen of people in Folsom prison and wardens. And I'm like, yo, I thought I'd escape these people.
Right.
Now
you're standing right beside them.
Yeah. I just ran right back to them. I'm like, no. But it was good because they looked at me different. They looked at me different. And all throughout my time in prison, some people, like a lot of the guards would call me Jordan. But, a few guards who saw that spark used to call me by my name, Jay. Mm-hmm. And I knew, like, okay.
That's unusual, too.
Yeah.
To get called by your first name.
Yeah, I still have my piece of humanity.
Yeah.
And that was my lifeline, like, no, you're still a human. Mm-hmm. And some people used to do that in private because they knew, they used to tell me, you're going to do some stuff when you get out. I don't know what it is, but you're different. You're going to do some stuff. And, things like that brought me back when the DA was like, hey, Jay, Tori Verber, she was the ADA at the time, and Judge Balaviano, Chief Eric Jones, all really poured into me. They were like, hey, we're happy to stand right beside you and do this work and talk to these kids. Thank you for doing this work. And I used to be like, I don't want to be around these people. Y'all are cops. Y'all put me in jail. But as time went on, I began to shed that.
Yeah.
And, really took my own self-accountability and start to listen, and said, well, tell me about your job. Tell me, like, how hard it is to be the chief of police. I never talked to a cop at all, right? Tell me about your job. And I sat down with Chief Jones for the first time. He told me, hey, I've been doing this for 20, 30 years, and I never knew what giving someone a felony actually does to them until I talked to you. And he like did this whole essay, the chief who listened, and like one of the catalysts for him changing his mind was talking to me about my issues. And, like everyone I would meet in that sector would actually give me an opportunity to go a little bit further into my development, because what I realized was I was beholden to my own cultural persuasion, and I didn't see the other side. So I didn't understand that I had the agency and I had the expertise to help influence policy in a way that they couldn't because they'd never been on my side.
Right.
And even though they were around people, like usually folks like me didn't engage in a way that could help transform policy.
Mm-hmm.
So I took a leap and I said, wait a minute, I could actually help you change some of your policies that don't make any sense.
Yeah.
Right? Instead of going to a church with your gun on, take the damn gun off.
Yeah.
Take your badge off. Be a regular person.
Right.
I guarantee people will talk to you and you'll gain insights about how much people don't like you, right?
Sure.
And he would do that and it would change the trajectory of the conversation. And I got a little bit deeper. At the time in 2012, 2013 in Stockton, a lot of people were dying. Kids were dying. Mm-hmm. And, I talked to my nephew at the time and we were in the house. And I said, go to the park, man. Why don't y'all go to the park? And he's like, man, I don't want to go to the park. It's dangerous. Mm-hmm. I said, we're going to change that. And I remember I got a call that same week. One of my closest friends, Sonny, his brother was shot in the head and murdered. His only brother. Shot like 4 times in the head. And I said, okay, I got to do something. It clicked and I said, I can't have my legacy be ice cold grape soda for 50 cents in paleo bars, right? So I called my business partner. I said, hey, man, what would you give me if you bought me out? What would you give me to buy me out of the business? He's like, no. You're the one actually driving it. I'm just financing. I'm like, no, I'm out. I gotta do this. And for those who know me, when I put my mind to something, there's no stopping.
Right.
And he bought me out and I started network mentoring. I didn't know what I was doing. It was a nonprofit. And I said, I'm going to do politics and community work until I fix the problem and stop it.
Wow.
And for the next 2 years, I dedicated my life and every cent I had to building this thing called First 50, which was a youth mentoring program that taught kids civics, right?
Yeah.
Like straight up civics. And we used to do it with academia and then applied, right? So we used to teach them about automotive technicians. So we used to have somebody come in there on Friday, talk about how to change a tire, how to change, oil, what situations where you might need to do this.
Yeah, real life stuff.
And then the next day we used to bring them to a shop and they would do it. And we did this for a lot of different things, like, a community garden. We did this with elder homes. Like, what does it mean why do we have a system to where, the older folks go to a home? And what does that mean? I'm going to show you what a home looks like, right? Mm-hmm. And it changed the perception of, kind of the city, right? They didn't understand what utilities were and police departments were and how it was funded. And we taught them all of that. Mm-hmm. And over the course of 2 years of doing them, actually about a year and a half, we started with about 70 kids. It got down to like 30 really hardcore kids. We did it at my dad's church because even though the parents and the teachers and the principal really wanted me at Franklin High School, which is a high school in Stockton, in East Stockton, they really wanted me there. School board president told me that because I had felonies, I could volunteer. So, again, didn't stop us. All the parents were like, let's do it at your dad's church, right? So we did that at my dad's church. And, we had kids with below 1.0 GPAs. We had kids with 4.0 GPAs in this group. We had Latinos, we had Blacks, we had everybody. And at the end of the program, I was broke, but they graduated and every single one of them went to college.
Which was unreal. I read about this, Jay, and I know you're not going to say this, but I'm going to you spent your last $100 on a graduation gift from one of your kids.
Yeah. My last, I was overdraft after that.
I mean, that's all in, man. And the other thing I don't want to just slough over, all those kids, they went on to college, and so you gave them the tools they needed to get to that next step, which had to be just, I don't know how that fills somebody up, but I know my daughter's a teacher, my youngest daughter, and the feedback she gets from being a good teacher, whatever that is, that's an intangible thing, but man, it's something, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Like, they became my family. Like, they became, like, my dad gave me a truck. It was an S10, right? And, he was like, keep this truck clean. Just keep it clean, don't wreck it. And I ended up putting a bunch of paint in the back because we used to paint trash cans to beautify parks around Stockton. It was things like that. And it became like this. When you saw the truck had paint all over it. And the kids would paint and put their handprints on the car. And none of that mattered because they were experiencing joy in Stockton in a way that they hadn't before. I mean, Stockton was a scary place, but when we got together, it wasn't scary at all. And they used to come to the church every Thursday, Friday, sometimes Wednesday, and I would just be there, and they would come and hang out, and it became a place of just, having a good time and really pouring into the kids. And I felt like that was my contribution to ensure that they didn't go down the road I went down, where even though a lot of these kids had two parents, I saw myself in them where both parents were working, and they were forced to just, kind of they were latchkey kids like I was.
Yeah.
So I didn't want the society to tell them that they were less than. And a lot of these kids, society would just beat them down, and the teachers would say stuff, and I would be like, hell no. You are powerful. You're going to change the world. You are magic. You're going to go to college. You're going to get good grades. You know why? I'm not going to let you fail at all. And, I poured my heart into it. And, when I remember the graduation, I sat all the way at the top. I didn't want to it was their moment, and no one knew that was it. Everyone used to ask me, well, you going to do the second cohort? And I'm like, this is it. It's all I got. I don't have no more money, at all. And it was going around. It was approaching my parole date, my parole index, 2015. And my dad told me when I got out, he said, hey, I'll give you 3 years. I'll give you 3 years, and I'm retiring to Oklahoma. And I'm like, all right, all I need is 3 years. And it was approaching that. And then I was scared and I was broke because I spent all my money there, and I got a job working as a field director for Jerry McNerney's re-election campaign, Congressman Jerry McNerney, Congressional District 9. Because, if you Google us at the time, we were always in the news. We were always bringing people out. We had hundreds of volunteers for a lot of our stuff. We were doing a lot of stuff in Stockton at the time. And, I tried to find a conventional job, with the city, with nonprofits, and everyone was like, no, we'll work with you, but we won't hire you, right? Which was insane to me because here I am, side by side with all these agencies and nonprofits and the government, and they're praising me, saying, Jay, you're doing such a good job, but they wouldn't hire me, right? So I'm good enough to work alongside you, but I'm not good enough for you to hire. And McNerney took a chance on me, and he hired me, and I was the first and probably only person on parole in America running a congressional field campaign. And we won by the largest margin ever.
That's awesome.
And that was, kind of like.
Did you know much about him when he gave you that shot, Jay? I mean,
yeah. So McNerney, he gave me. So what we used to do at First 50 is we used to get certificates. Well, we got a lot of certificates from every level of government based on the work. And the reason we used to ask for these certificates, not for the program, but we used to ask for 47 or 50, however many kids we had at the program at that time. And we used to give them certificates. And so, these kids walked away not only with the knowledge and the love, right, but a stack of certificates.
That's cool.
From all these governments, all these levels of governments. And so I used to work with McNerney a lot of times and give him a lot of publicity. So he knew, if you know anything about politics, the field campaign is about bringing people to the work. Yeah. And at that time, it was a state blue seat. So he thought that all he needed was volunteers. And we got, I came in and I did a lot of volunteer work. Brought a bunch of volunteers to his campaign, and we won. And I was in November of 2014. And mind you, my dad said, "Hey, when you get off parole, I'm moving." And January was approaching in 2015, so this was the date. I got out January 19th, 2012. January 19th, 2015, I paroled. My dad left in December, and he was like, "You have the house for January to yourself, and then son, you're on your own. You've done well in Stockton." And I remember my last shot was to try to get a job with the city, because the city was like, "Hey, we'll give you a job, and they didn't say that in writing, but they were like, we really would love to work with you. It'd be great. Like, you working for the city, right? I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I always thought they were going to hire me. And, January came and, I reached out to the city manager and I was like, hey man, getting off parole, would love for you to come and talk to me, or I would love to come and talk to you about an actual job. Mm-hmm. And he said, man, it's going to be too politically difficult to get you hired here. Mm. And I'm like, wow, okay.
Another gut punch.
Yeah, that was a hard one. And so I was faced with like either getting a conventional job after doing all this stuff for years.
All the good stuff. Yeah.
I skimmed over a lot. We did a lot of work in 3 years. Really, did a renaissance in Stockton where it was just different.
And you had real results.
Yeah, the energy was different in Stockton. And I decided to leave. So I packed up my car. I had 2 boxes, didn't really have any clothes. I wasn't a clothes guy. I didn't have no money to buy clothes then. I had a couple of suits, the ties my dad gave me. Mm-hmm. I had some dress shoes with holes in them. I had like 2 pair of dress socks, but most of the socks I used to wear was athletic socks with my dress shoes. I had a couple of overcoats, some jackets, and put it in the car, and had a pack of Newports. And usually I used to smoke Camel Crush. I said, you know what, I'm gonna smoke Newports all the way to LA. And I didn't. My granny and my older sister lived in LA. My granny lived in an assisted living facility with my sister, which was her caretaker. Mm-hmm. And so I couldn't stay there. So I'm like, you know what? I could stay there for one night. But my girlfriend at the time moved to LA, and I said, you know what? Let's do it. And I moved to LA with like my last paycheck from McNerney, which was like $2,500 bucks. Mm. And I didn't know anybody else. And I moved to LA, and I remember the day I got there, I had spent $500 bucks, just like all out partying. I'm like, I'm gonna, be with my sister. Yeah. I'm like, I'm gonna have some fun. I just went on this crazy 3-year run in Stockton. I was depressed as hell. No one knew, but I didn't have anywhere to stay. And for that 3 months. I went from, staying a night at my girl's house. I didn't want her to know that didn't have anywhere to go, to my granny. I used to sneak in my granny's house and sneak out before the front desk could see me, out the back door, hop the gate into the alleyway, run to my car. And that lasted like 3 months.
What I think is interesting about that is I've read some things on homelessness, and a lot of people aren't aware that are even close around that are people that don't know. It's one of those things that people can almost get away with for a certain amount of time without people knowing that they don't have a place to go.
Yeah. Transitional homelessness. Yeah. I was transitional homeless for a while. For 3 months, sleeping in my car, solid. And I had money to rent an apartment, but no one would rent to me because a lot of the apartments were managed by property management companies that did background checks. Right. So, I just couldn't find employment, couldn't find jobs. My money was going down and down and down. My car got repossessed like 2 or 3 times. Luckily my dad sent me money. He was like, hey man, I saw that you didn't pay your car note. Here you go. And go get my car out, because I didn't have a car. I didn't have a place to stay. And I went to this organization, LA Voice. And I talked to the executive director, Zach Hooper. And Zach was this Harvard grad out of Indiana, really smart, sharp guy. And it was organizing, community organizing. Mm-hmm. And I knew and understood the concept of community organizing inherently, but I wasn't classically trained at that moment. And but I did a lot of community
organizing. Even though you had been doing that. Yeah,
I did a lot of community organizing even before I knew what it was.
Yeah, I mean, all the stuff you were doing in the park was community organizing.
Was community organizing, yeah. And I said, hey, you don't know me, so I'm going to tell you my story. And I'm homeless. And give me an opportunity. Part-time. He said, I'll pay you $15 an hour. I said, pay me 19, you got me. And he paid me 19 bucks an hour and connected me. And he said, hey, we have a bunch of black churches in South Los Angeles. And LA Voice was a part of the PICO network, is People Improving Community Through Organizing. It's one of the largest faith-based organizing networks in the country. And, you know, they have a whole ideology, a Linsky train, kind of Obama went through a Linsky train organizing. It's, you know, kind of rooted in the organizing circle and principle around the powers in the relationship. So building deep relationships with people and surfacing self-interest, and then taking those self-interest and needs, and then, you know, ensuring that society answers those self-interests of the people. Really, really deep organizing strategy and methodology. And they wanted to bring black churches into the fold in South Los Angeles. And so, you know, my dad's a pastor. I was like, this is serendipitous right here. So I go and start knocking on doors, and come to find out, I was good at talking to people about, you know, self-interest, and gained some really deep relationships in Los Angeles, conversations and relationships I still have today. And got really, really good at it. So much so that Zach could not hire me full time. He was stuck. He was like, okay, I got to hire this guy. And like 2 more months of me being homeless, after he gave me the part-time position, so about 5 months where I was just like literally going from place to place to place. And I got my first check, and I said, you know what? I'm going to go as furthest as possible. I got to find me a place to go, you know, because I can't keep driving to South Los Angeles, you know, and then sleeping in my car in a Walmart. It's just not safe, right? Just so I can go talk to clergy, you know, to see if they want to join, you know, PICO. And so I went to North Hollywood, and I found this little itty bitty apartment building, like 8 units. And I went there, and it said the manager on site, and I'm like, yes. I mean, it's privately owned. It's not ran by a property management company. And I knocked on it, and I saw roaches, and I'm like, you know what? I don't care at this point. I'm going to be happy with my apartment. Yeah. And I knocked on it, and I'm like, listen, I will pay you 2 months in advance. All the money I have, I just need a place to live. And he said, sure. I'm like, what? And, man, I went back to my car, and I cried. My first time crying for a while. And I cried. I said, oh, man, this is it. I'm going to make it. I'm finally going to make it. This is it. And I stayed in that. It was a 1-bedroom apartment. And I fixed that thing up, man. I put little traps. I didn't, you know, I knew how to, like, you know, put little traps around so the roaches won't come in my house and
push it out to everybody else.
Yeah. Stay next door. And I had good neighbors. So then my neighbors were clean. We were clean. So we were good up top. Yep. And, you know, they didn't speak a lick of English. I didn't speak a lick of Spanish, but we got along. They used to feed me all the time. Because for whatever reason, they knew that I was like on a mission. Yeah. And they used to bring me food, and their kids used to like knock on my door, bring me a little candy. And I could, you know, give the kids candy. And I built a little community there. And, you know, I got 7 months into my work in LA, and just really built a community in LA quickly. When I finally got my feet under me, it was just like,
you knew what you were doing. You had a passion. You were good at it. Yep.
Yeah, and I was meeting people, doing the same stuff I was doing in Stockton.
Yep.
Just making my rounds and making sure people knew my name and knew what I was about, and adding value to their lives. And, you know, and the clergy I was working with went to Zach and said, you got to hire this guy. You got to hire this guy. You have to hire this guy. So he hired me. He paid me $47,000.
What year was this?
This is 2015. This was
got it.
9 years ago. So he paid me $47,500. Man, and I worked my tail off for like the next 5 months. I was a year in, and I met this guy, Robert Brooks. You don't know Robert Brooks? Google Robert Brooks. He is definitely a silent genius. One of my mentors, one of my friends, one of my brothers. You know, I'm always in debt to Robert. Robert has changed the lives of so many people, and he's extremely humble about it. And he asked me. He said, I met him at the California Endowment. It's this philanthropic institution. And I met him, and he was trying to organize a fair for people with records to change their record. They had just passed this law, Prop 47, which allowed certain people with certain crimes to reduce those felonies to misdemeanors, like drug crimes and all this different stuff. And so he's like, let's do a fair, and I'm like, what is it? Who the hell is this guy think you do a fair, like with Ferris wheels and clowns and stuff? That's not gonna happen. That's not gonna work. And so it's my first time meeting Robert. He was like an unconventional thinker like that. And so I'm like, I gotta meet this guy. This guy is a little off, but he's talking about Ferris wheels and clowns and criminals. Like, what the fuck is he talking about? So
fair for criminals.
Yeah. So I meet him, and he's like, where do you see yourself in 10 years? And I'm like, it's one of those questions like, Rasta back in the hole asked me. And I felt like
deep thought. Yeah.
I'm like, this is going to be life-changing right here.
Yeah.
This is a life-changing, because usually life-altering events start with a question that you can't really answer, and then you go on this book. And I said, I want to make over. I didn't tell him what I wanted to make. I said I wanted to help myself and others get out of this cycle that we're in. And I didn't have a name for it. I was just like this weird cycle where I can't do anything.
Right. It's like
I'm trying to do good, I'm trying to pay my debt, but like this never-ending debt that I'm paying. He said, well, what do you want to make? And I said, I want to make over $100,000. And at the time, I thought that was like a lot of money.
Well, I mean, a lot of people see that's the six figure, first
level,
like $100,000. Yeah.
And so he was like, all right. And he says, I'll be in touch. I'm like, this is a waste of my time, man. This guy is wasting my time. I don't hear from him. And then he comes back like a month later and he says, hey, man, so we got this position. You've been crushing it. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, in Stockton, in LA, you just been crushing it. People are talking about you. And I'm like, what? People are talking about me. He's like, yeah, man, you're doing a good job. That was my first time realizing that when you are righteous and authentic and walking in your purpose, right, and are focused on being the best self you could be, your name will be in rooms you've never entered.
Yeah.
Right? In good ways and bad ways.
Yeah.
Right? And my name was in rooms I've never even been in the mouths and the ears of people that I've never even met. Right? In a favorable way. I didn't know that. And Robert was like, yeah, people are talking about you, man. You've done a lot of good work, and we got this position. And I'm like, all right, well, what is it? He's like, well, it's just, and he made it up. I found it later on. He was like network manager, managing their statewide network for his organization, Californians for Safety and Justice. And I'm like, okay, what are you going to pay me? $97,000. No, $92,500. And he said, with a lot of room for growth. And I'm like, a lot of room for growth? What are you talking about? He's like, a lot. But Robert saw something in me that I didn't see in myself.
Yeah.
This was the beginning of 2016. This is like end of 2015, beginning of 2016. And I'm like, let's do it. So I had a conversation with Zach. Zach was like really, really kind of sad. He's like, no, best organizer leaving. And I'm like, I don't know what organizer means, but I had been trained a lot under Zach, and Mike McBride taught me a lot. And Pico really gave me a crash course. And
it's kind of like your foundation. Yeah.
Yeah, the science of organizing. I knew the art lived in me, but the science I was really taught by Pico in that 1 year of just like intense training. And I started with Californians for Safety and Justice. And it was 2015, 2016 as network manager. It was like the lowest position you could have in the organization. And man, in the next 7 years, I've since retired, so I'm no longer the work at then Alliance for Safety, now Alliance for Safety and Justice. I retired last year, but in 7 years, let me just run down some stuff that we were able to accomplish.
Let's do that.
So started out network manager, and then we started this thing called Second Chance, the Second Chances program, where he kept his promise and let me work on getting free. And he said, hey man, if you want to get free, you work towards getting free. And I was like, I don't even know where to start. He said, well, we want you to be the Second Chances program director. And I'm like, and he slid me a piece of paper, and it was an idea where we would change the laws in California. And I'm like, I've never changed the law ever in my life, but I'm going to learn how to.
Yeah.
And the first thing we did was we actually there was a ballot initiative that they threw me into and said, hey, we want you to run the community side of this ballot initiative. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, how do I even do that? And he's like, you'll figure it out. And I figured it out, and we won that ballot initiative, Prop 57, which gave people an opportunity inside prison to earn time off by going to college and going to drug and alcohol classes and going to behavior classes, right? Like, you get like a month off if you finish something. But that's changed, and it's people to, get their life together and do some good stuff, right? I wish I would have had that when I was in there.
Yeah.
And it was huge. It was massive, because it helped California reduce its prison population. And at the time, California was still under receivership because it was so overcrowded that one person would die every single week from a preventable medical condition. And so the U.S. Supreme Court was like, lower your prison population because people are dying, and California couldn't do it. So Californians for Safety and Justice and a whole host of organizations stepped in and said, well, we need to tweak some of these laws that were keeping people in prison past the time they should be in prison. Yeah. If you steal a ham sandwich, you shouldn't be in prison for 5 years. Maybe you should be in prison or jail for like a couple of months, but then you should get job training so you can go buy yourself, a ham sandwich. It just makes sense. And when you do that, people don't come back.
Right.
And so California jumped into work to start passing these laws, and Californians for Safety and Justice was leading the charge in these massive ballot initiatives that shift the culture and the operations of how prisons and policing work in California. And I was like smack dab in the middle of this, and I didn't realize that I was helping to drive a massive culture shift in California towards criminal justice reform. Yeah. And like when you're in it, Brent, you're in it.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm looking back. I'm like, wow.
Oh, it's amazing. When you looked at it on paper, it's unbelievable what happened.
Yeah. So we led the charge. I led the community side on Prop 57, and then they made me Second Chance Program Director, and I pulled together all of the people that I knew, about 27 folks that were directly involved with either sending someone to prison, arresting someone so they can go to jail, processing them, all of it. So we had police, probation, people who ran organizations that were formerly incarcerated themselves, folks who just got out, behavioral health, the health sector, public defenders, all in a room.
Wow.
At the Amity Foundation for 6 months, every single month. So for one day out of the month, we would come together and pour over all the research we can find, basically pointing to why people with records had problems with these collateral consequences.
It's all the people communicating that should be communicating.
100%. And so we did this participatory research process, right? And people thought we were crazy. They're like, "Jay, you got the police with like Terrence Stewart, who they're like, you meet Terrence, like Terrence, you will not think Terrence be in a room with the police, right? But we were." And when we first started, Brent, this was so beautiful. We're at the Amity Foundation. I pull all these people together. Chief Jones was one of them, right? And we flew everybody from all around California into this room. And the first day, I get up there and I say, we're going to figure this thing out, and we're going to free a lot of people in California. That's my promise, right? That's my promise. And I'm like, I'm going to tell you why. Terrence, tell your story. So Terrence gets up there, and Terrence is like, I broke the cycle. I have a master's degree from UC Riverside. And I can't get housing because of a drug conviction in the 90s.
Yep.
The people are like, what? What? So the deputy chief from Oxnard, Eric, his name was Eric too, shoots his hand up. And I'm like, oh man, this is a bad idea. And all the staff that I was working with It's like, oh, Jay, you didn't step in it now. And he gets up without even me calling on him, and he says, in my 20 years, he says the same thing Chief Jones said to me years earlier. In my 20 years of law enforcement, I never knew that me giving you a felony would result in this. Mm. He said, we used to high five when we used to catch somebody and give them a felony and stack the charges. We didn't know what we were doing. Mm-hmm. No one knows this stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh man, here we go. We are in it. We are in it now. And for 6 months, we cried together, we argued, we laughed, we ate good food, and we became close. And like we produced a research project called Repairing the Road to Redemption in California. And the 4 buckets were, who are people with records? Mm-hmm. So there are 70 to 100 million people in America with some sort of
I think
record.
Surprises a lot of people when you just said
right?
that.
Yeah, it's
70 million people. We got 330 million people in the United States.
Exactly. Like it's a lot of people. And they face what is called, well, about 90%, so 9 out of 10 of those folks already served their time and been out an average of 5 to 7 years. Mm-hmm. And you know the data, Britt. Mm-hmm. Like if you've been out an average of 5 years, you are just as likely to commit a crime as someone that never committed a crime ever. Right. Meaning you are not going to commit another crime. But even still, you face 40,000 legal restrictions that kick on after you serve your time.
Yep.
These things lock people out of entire sectors like healthcare, insurance, real estate.
Yes. All the things you got hit in the gut with.
All the things I got hit in the gut with. And what was more surprising, what we found out, is that because of the housing regulation, people are forced to live in the same area.
Yes. Segregates that population to that population.
Yeah. Post-conviction redlining, right? You get redlined to a certain area, you know, and the people who aren't redlined to those areas are either staying with someone, aren't on the lease, or they, you know, bought their own house. Right? And the mass majority of folks are either staying with someone or just not on the lease. Right? And then the folks who are on the lease, who have agency, you know, either they bought their own house, they found a spot that didn't do background checks, and that's just the reality of the situation in America. And so what ends up happening is, because the majority of folks, not everybody, a lot of us are thriving and we're kicking butt, right? And we have to take concessions a lot, right? Because, you know, I lucked up and got into the nonprofit sector in a part of the nonprofit sector where my experience was actually a plus and not a negative, right? And a lot of people aren't, so they are underpaid and they're underappreciated, right? And they're taking jobs that, you know, are paying low wages, but they're working, right?
They call it the felony discount. You know, this guy's really good, but we could pay him less, I think.
Yeah, we could pay him less. And they're going into like these hard labor jobs.
Yeah.
People are like, oh yeah, I work in construction, I got a job. One of the guys I know, he works construction. This guy travels 2 hours, 2.5 hours to work, 2.5 hours back.
Wow. And
he's on the high rises on a beam, right? He's like, yo, at least I make $100,000 a year. I'm like, dude, you know what I mean? Like that's what we have to do. And we do it and we're thriving. And so people with records aren't poor. We're not in poverty. We're just stuck with this never ending debt that gets in our way almost every single time we try to elevate.
Right.
And we still, even though these 40,000 legal restrictions exist, we still go above and beyond and still hop over those hurdles and still are successful.
Right.
We're not crying. We're not moaning about it. We're not asking for handouts. We're saying get out of our way. And that's what we found in this report. And we said, well, how do we make it easier for folks who have served their time, paid their debt, to go on with their life and take care of themselves and their families? That's all we wanted to do. That's all I wanted to do. Which is like, I just want to be able to live in an apartment that doesn't have roaches. Right? That's what I asked for. That's it. That's it. And we found out that the expungement apparatus, our record change apparatus in California, the whole system was crazy. It was nonsensical. It was costly. And we would have to reverse engineer the entire thing.
Everything.
And that's what we came up with. So we had like 5 or 6 recommendations. the Repairing the Road to Redemption report. If you Google it, Repairing the Road to Redemption in California, you can download it off the Time Done website or the Californians for Safety and Justice website right now. You know, it has the 27 co-authors on there. Christine Karamaji was the main researcher on the project. She did an amazing job. The Raven Group helped pull folks together. We had a really good research team and writing team. And the main policy person on it was John Cutler. He's like I love John Cutler. And I remember after Repairing the Road to Redemption report, we were like, okay, well, how do we get this out of here? How do we get this into the masses? And I said, well, we have to operationalize this. We have to really start a campaign. And we started to talk to people about second chances. And what we realized is that term rubs people the wrong way, right? If you talk to more kind of, I won't say conservative, but more folks who are like, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, they're like, well, how many chances do you want to give people? And then you talk to the other people, like the more liberal leaning folks, and they're like, people never had a first chance, right? So we're like, you know
That's
what?
a Lewis Reed statement. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, well, we are not going to call this second chances. And we were trying to figure out what to call it. And I don't know who came up with the term, but it was like time done. And I said,
love time done.
Because
it's whenever you come up with a good word or phrase like that, it actually says what it is. Time done means I'm done. I'm ready to move on. I want to live my life.
Yeah. And so the tagline was, when will my sentence end? And I'm like, well, how do we launch this thing? How do we tell people that we're going to actually go? How do we tell people that we're actually going to go and change all these laws, right? And we're like, well, what about a concert? So we're like, okay, let's do a concert at the Greek Theater in Los Angeles. And the only way you get in is that you got to have some sort of record. It's never been done before. So they're like, okay, Jay, go ahead. And I remember we had a headliner. It was
packed the place. I mean, like this place seats like how many people?
6,000 people.
Yeah, I mean, you pack it.
Yeah. So we packed it. We had a headliner, T.I. The headliner pulls out. So concert, none but formerly incarcerated people. We're going to announce that we're going to change the expungement process in California and free everybody, right? And we had a headliner, T.I. We had the flyer printed. We're ready to go. We had the date, October 21st, 2018, 7 o'clock. We're rocking and rolling. 3 weeks before the concert, T.I. pulls out. Everyone's freaking out, right? I pick up the phone. I call my man, Joe Paul. I'm like, Joe Paul, I need a headliner. He's like, what about Nipsey Hussle? I'm like, let's do it.
That'll work.
He calls Nipsey's brother, Black Sam. Black Sam's like, tell me about it. We tell Black Sam what it is. He's like, here goes what it's going to cost. It's a benefit concert. We'll give you a discount. We're like, let's go. Nipsey's now the headliner. We get Ty Dolla $ign. We get Guapole. We get Ebro. We get Yessie Ortiz. Man. We have a crazy lineup. We get the Greater Zion Baptist Church Choir. We're rocking and rolling. Tickets are sold out. The day happens. So it's like 2 weeks before. I'm like, we need something big. We need a statement. We need something that's going to tell the stories of these 40,000 laws, because every time that we talk about these 40,000 collateral consequences, people's eyes glaze over and they don't know what the hell we're talking about. So I'm like, let's just write them all on one big wall. This was the time where Trump was talking about building the wall. I'm like, let's build our own wall and write the actual code section. Penal Code section 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, felons can't adopt. I want that shit written out all over this wall. The event manager comes back and says, the wall is going to be 70 feet long, 30 feet high. It's going to cost you about $40,000 to $50,000 to build. And I'm like, I go to my boss. I'm like, hey, this is going to be a hit. Let's put it in the budget. They're like, okay, Jay, let's do it. We built the massive wall, put it right in front of the Greek Theater. You can literally read the code sections. Go up there and read if you have a felony, you can't do this. Health and safety code 2, 3, 4, 5. You can't work in healthcare. like these written all over the wall. People walk up and they see this, and they start crying because they finally are being seen. People are finally folks are finally able to have their story told in a way that it's not just them anymore.
Right.
That, you know how you've been saying, hey man, I see this little green guy every night. And people are laughing at you until they see the little green guy.
There he is.
That's what it was. People are like, oh, that's me right there. Sold out. People start pouring in. You know, folks are taking pictures with the wall. I mean, if you Google the wall of consequences, hashtag time done, you're going to see this massive wall, right?
Because you took it up. I mean, I'm jumping ahead of it, but you also took it up and brought the lawmakers out to see this wall.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly, right? And so this wall's there. We're at the Greek Theater. It's my time. They're like, Jay, get up there and make the big statement. I am scared. Usually I don't get nervous in front of people.
I can't imagine you nervous.
Yeah, but I walk out, and there's about like 4,000 people out there scattered. Everyone's screaming. They're ready for the headliner. They just saw Ty Dolla $ign. He killed it. They're ready for Nipsey. I get up there. I'm supposed to announce Nipsey, but I'm also supposed to talk about time done and what our goals are.
Yeah.
I get up there. I'm shaking, you know, and there's this picture of me with everybody in front of me and got their phones out,
Yeah.
and I'm like, we're going to free everybody in California. You're like, yeah. The look on my boss's face. Like,
What did he just say?
And we're going to do it in 5 years.
5 years. We put a number on it.
Oh, man.
Got a deadline.
Yeah. And so.
That's a good way to set a goal. Get up in front of 5,000, 6,000 people and give it a deadline.
You're like, yeah. And I'm like, and who wants to see Nipsey Hussle? Right? And they're like, Nipsey. So Nipsey comes out, does his set, takes pictures. We're talking about it. It was great. Next day, we get a bunch of emails. I want to join. 6,000 people join Time Done.
That's awesome.
Overnight, right?
Awesome.
And it wasn't just people at the concert. It was people who were hearing about what we were doing. All over. They're like, I want to join Time Done. Let's rock and roll. I realized we got something. We start getting to work. I don't know what we're going to be, how we're going to change these laws. So I'm the next step was to bring all the attorneys together who've been working on this for years. Me and John Cutler do a tour all around California, talking to attorneys. Eliza Hirsch was a part of it. Man, she's like an awesome human being. I love Eliza. Sarah Crawley. Those two really, Sarah Crawley, Eliza Hirsch, and John Cutler really held me up during that time. Because for like 8 months, we would go around and talk to these like record change attorneys who would tell us we were crazy and we couldn't do it and it was too costly. And who are you? Yeah. And I almost had to fight one of these guys. He got really upset and I was telling him we're going to do it. And he's like, I've been working on this for years and you don't know nothing. I'm like, bro, listen, you want to go outside, bro? Like we can actually I can show you what I'm capable of, right? He took me all out my character, man. I was so pissed off at this guy. He ended up apologizing when we passed it.
I bet.
So he, so I said, you know what? I'm just going to draw it out. So I did some actually drew it out. And I drew out what I call the post-sentence record matrix. I drew it out on a piece of paper and I sent it to John Cutler. And I'm like, John, this is it. This is what it should be. And he's like, this is really good. Let me chew on this. And that became what we called sunset, which is a concept that they talked about prior, like, hey, this concept of sunsets, but it didn't really have formality. So we drew it out, called it the post-sentence record matrix. I drew it out. John Cutler made it real in terms of policy. We start to write the policy. I was writing, he was writing, and we tried it for the first time. It was Senate Bill 1298. We got the fiscal note back, which is how much it's going to cost from the Appropriations Committee. And they told us it was going to cost about $1 billion or some crazy stuff. And we're like, okay, we need to do some narrative shifting here. So we got with Code for America, Yvonne Silva, Milani, Aaliyah. Those folks really were like, let's do some design thinking. They came down to my house in LA. We were all Indian style, writing stuff on the wall, really trying to reverse engineer the entire California expungement system from the ground up, literally every single piece of it. And I'm like, let's do this and let's do that. I had all these ideas, and they were like, let's make it human-centered. And I said, okay, this is what we're going to do. We finally set on a really good set of policies. We knew what we had to do. We knew that, a lot of the Department of Justice didn't even know about the system. The court system didn't really understand it. No one really understood it but us, and then we partnered with George Gascon and Max Zabos. Max became like a force to be reckoned with in terms of like really putting the foot on the pedal and ensuring that the Department of Justice wasn't inflating numbers in terms of what it was going to cost. Code for America knew the algorithms. I knew the process like the back of my hand. And we went to battle. We went to war. And I'm like, the first thing we got to do, y'all, is we have to bring this wall to Sacramento.
I love it.
I want people to understand because we're going to have a lot of opposition.
I mean, what a visual.
And before we even start, Brent, I'm like, I want the police chiefs. I want the sheriffs. I want the DAs. I want CHP. I want anybody who thinks about opposing this on the grounds of criminality, right, and letting criminals run free. I want to explain this to them before we even get started. Let's bring the wall here. And I call my guy, Craig Weeda from Render Events. He's like my guy. He says, I'm like, Craig, so I want to bring the wall to Sacramento. He's like, what are you talking about? You know how much it took, how crazy it was to build that thing? I'm like, yeah, let's bring it to Sacramento. I want to shut down the whole street. So we shut down the street right in front of the Capitol, right in front of the state Capitol, and we built this massive 70-foot long by 30-foot high wall on these big, huge trusses. And the trusses were like 4 feet, 5 feet by themselves. So the wall ended up being like 40 feet or 35 to 40 feet high, right? And we invited all of the potential opposition to our 5-year campaign we were going to have. This was in 2019. And that morning, they all came out, all of them. And I told the story of how we got to the collateral consequences. And I had them stand far away. And I have this video, it's a really good video. I'm like, stand far away, so they couldn't see it. They're like, what is all that stuff? Like, you have to walk up on it to read the writing. So I'm like, I'm talking about, the Hawker versus the state of New York and the first time the U.S. Supreme Court made a decision around post-conviction collateral consequences and saying that we are a bad moral character forever so we can never be redeemed. It's a Supreme Court case. And I'm like, I can never be redeemed. Come a little closer. Then I went from the macro to the micro and talked about my own story, my own hopes and dreams that were crushed because this idea that I can never be redeemed, ever. In the state of California, I can never be whole. I can never be human again. Come a little closer and come a little closer until they got to the wall. And I said, now read it. And they read it and they were like, this is crazy. People can't do all this stuff. I'm like, exactly. That's what we're changing. Do not get in our way.
That's awesome.
It took us 5 years. From that point, it took us 3 bills, 2 budget plays, but we changed the entire expungement system in California. Right now,
and how many people that affect?
Every single person, Brent, in the state of California have a pathway to expungement. If you have a criminal record and you did not go to prison and you have completed probation and you've been out 2 years crime-free, California is going to automatically expunge your record. If you did go to prison and you've been out 2 years crime-free, all you have to do is fill out a piece of paper, follow the directions, follow with the court, and by law, they have to grant your expungement.
And you were one of the first ones, if not the first one, to actually do that. They didn't know what to do with you, Jay.
Yeah, I was the first one to file pro per. I'm literally was like, yo, I'm going to pressure test this. This is something that we did, me and a whole lot of other people did. I'm going to pressure test this thing. I'm going to file it by myself with the help of Rebecca from the public defender's office, amazing, amazing woman, Eduardo, all these people. We walked up to Stockton Courthouse, we filed our paperwork, and we went into the court. About 3 or 4 months later, we went into the court. And we, like some of us, like gang affiliations, attempted murder, we're like, we're not going to get our record expunged. And the judge was a visiting judge from Kern County. They call Kern County Hangman's County. They call Kern County Hangman's County. You know what that means? They are giving football numbers out when you get convicted. There was no way this visiting judge was going to expunge all of our records. Some had attempted murder and gang affiliation. The judge said, the first person goes up. I'm sweating. My dad's there. He's praying. My wife is there. My kids are there. We're all like nervous. The public defender who's been helping us is like, we have to continue this. This judge is not going to be good to us. Mm-hmm. The judge says, DA, do you have any objections to the first case? He says, the way the law is written, and the law is written really well, we cannot object based on our own feelings. We only can inform the court if this person has any new convictions. And I'm here to inform you this person has no new convictions, therefore I have no objection.
And what was it? Was 2 years the incentive to be out, not to reoffend?
2 years.
2 years, okay. 2
years. And the judge expunged one after the next, expunged all our convictions. And we were like, whoa, what just happened? What just happened? Okay. And literally people started to file all over California, and folks are getting their record expunged. The automatic process, they've expunged close to 20 to 30 million records automatically already, and they're just getting started. And then people with felonies who did go to prison, folks are starting to like file with the court, and it's getting crazy, and folks are getting free. Wow. You know, if you have a record now, what does expungement mean? The way we wrote it, Brent, we wrote it based on my story. Mm-hmm. To be totally honest,
right?
I said, listen, I can no longer, in my right mind, continue to pass laws and not be free. And we were passing laws left and right. You know, the organization passed 100 laws in 10 years. Me, I was responsible.
Still were free. Yeah,
exactly. And like my tenure, it was about 50 laws that I was responsible for, right? Or like working alongside and raising money and doing a bunch of stuff. And so all those laws didn't affect me. And so we wrote this because I'm like, I have to get free. Mm-hmm. You know, I have to get free. I'm tired. And I kept going back to that first time sitting in that chair where Kirk was telling me.
First day you're out of prison, finding out that all your dreams have just been wiped out.
Yeah, I said, you know what? I'm going to change this. I'm going to change it. It may take me a long time. It took me about 10 years to change it. Yeah. You know, but I didn't give up. And I wrote my own ticket. I wrote the tickets for every single person in California. And we didn't stop. ARC, Homeboy Industries joined the fight. And people were joining the fight, and we were winning, and we won. And it feels really, really good to finally be free. You know, I was there when the governor signed the bill. I have pictures of him signing it, and I told him what it meant for him to sign that. I have the actual pen and the law that he signed, you know. And after I got free, I decided, you know, I'm done. I did it. I got free.
It's unbelievable when you read through it. And I want to ask you a question about how we can get this and connect dots across the nation. Before I do, I forgot. I got so enthralled with what you were talking about. I forgot to recognize my show sponsor. Nightmare Success Podcast is sponsored by the White Collar Support Group, the world's first support group devoted to people navigating the white collar criminal justice system. I'm a member of the White Collar Support Group, and I tell you, this is a bunch of people who help each other through the criminal justice journey for free. Whether you're just starting your journey or you've made it through on the other side, it's a great space for you. You can join us on Zoom Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, 4 p.m. Pacific. For information, go to prisonist.org. That's prisonist.org. Start here. So, Jay, after doing all this, you know, one of the great things that I get to do sitting in this seat is I get to talk to a lot of people that are doing incredibly impactful things, but it's in their place. You know, like Michigan's got a lot of really cool things on Ban the Box and the stuff with housing, stuff like that. And there's all kinds of different places. And what you've done in California, what do you think it takes for us to create the umbrella of the effect of a card carrying AARP, but it's ex-felons that get their rights, whether you live in Mississippi or Alabama or California or Michigan? What does it take? How do we get that voice to be powerful enough to create a tidal wave?
Yeah, so there are two things. There are two organizations right now that are doing tremendous work. So one is headed up by Sheena Mead. Sheena Mead is a force. She is amazing. And she runs the Clean Slate Initiative.
Yep, I've heard of that.
Big money backs it. And they are responsible and will be responsible for expungement policies in all 50 states. And they're not going to lose. they're literally winning right now. So no matter what state you're in, they're
It's
coming.
coming your way.
They're coming. They're coming. A wave is coming. It already started. A wave is coming. I mean, look, I was, California is a little bit different because, they had me and Ingrid
Yeah, you had your passion behind it and a great voice. And there's no way not to listen to you and get caught up in the excitement and the passion that you have. But what do you think your next step is on your journey?
So I'll say it first here. You talked about nationally.
Yeah.
This is happening in almost every country in the world.
Yes.
In India, if you have a record, it's difficult for you to find a job. In China, if you have a record, it's difficult for you to find a job. In France, in the UK, in South Africa, in Canada, in Australia, this is happening to people all around the world. Close to 500 million, if not more, people have records in this world, and the narrative is not being connected. We're so focused on the national frame, but what is happening is we can't even travel to a lot of these countries if we have a felony.
Yeah.
So we
try to get into Italy.
Yeah.
Or
we
Canada.
We can't even go and politic and help them. So my next move is to pull people together who are working on this issue from these major countries and help to develop a platform and a plan to put pressure on the UN to bring down a resolution to say this is what the right to be rehabilitated looks like, and we should be able to travel to different countries. Our sentence has to be completed after our time is done, and that's my next step is to ensure that what we did in California spreads all across the globe.
I love it, Jay. I want to know. So you've been on this unbelievable journey. I mean, it's like we just watched a movie here in part 1, part 2. Where you are now in your life, what do you think's your biggest takeaway from this journey you've been on for the listeners out there?
My biggest takeaway is value extraction. This rule of, I have like these rules I've created, and when I write the book, they'll all be in there. The rule of value extraction, that no matter what situation you are in, there's a value because you are in that situation. The situation inherently has value.
Mm-hmm.
You inherently have value, right? And I've been able to use that insanely optimistic point of view to grab value from the depths of society, which is the whole, and gain tremendous value in the deepest, darkest pit you can be in a given society. And if I could extract value out of that, then no matter what situation you find yourself in, whether it's being homeless, whether it's being addicted, whether it's being jobless, whether it's like divorce or losing a loved one, there's an insane amount of value in that situation. You just have to be still, trust in yourself, become introspective, block out all external forces, and you will find value. And that problem that you're facing inherently can transform into an idea that can change the world.
And I think that's exactly how you've handled things from the moment that you got out, because if you would have taken those 3 gut punches and then a 4th gut punch, there's 2 places to go there. One is I'm a victim and I'm going to curl up, I'm going to point fingers, I'm going to blame everybody, and I give up. Or you take the Jay Jordan approach, you're a survivor, you look for solutions, you look for where you can be of value, and you step forward. And it's not easy. It's not going to be easy. It never was easy. Everything you just talked about none of that was easy. Even the headliner left after you guys had the stuff print. I mean, and you still packed the place. So, I mean, always, even if you're doing stuff really, really good, there's stuff that happens. And you just got to deal with it. And you still, you just don't give up on it. And that's why I was so drawn to your story, Jay, is you had so many things that you didn't know. And you didn't stop you. You just said, how am I going to figure it out? Because people there were people along your road that believed in you. They saw something in you. And they said, you can figure it out, Jay. And you were like, okay, yeah, I guess I can figure it out. And you did. And that's one of the messages I want people to get from this. Is there's a lot of people out there listening, they get stuck. They build up prisons in their own mind. The biggest thing, and we call this thing nightmare success because you have to walk through your fears to get to where you want to go. Each time you were presented with something you didn't know, you didn't stop, you just walked into it and you figured it out. And you might not have figured it out the first day, but you figured it out. And that's that secret sauce to whatever that intangible thing is, to finally get something that you've added value to, you've made an impact with, because it's not easy to get there. It's not easy. You just don't wake up and say, I've changed the world. It's all good now. It just doesn't work that way. But it's good stuff, Jay. And man, I appreciate you being on. As far as I know, Instagram, Mr. Jay Jordan, anywhere else that people want to help, Jay, where should they go?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very responsive. I've always been. We used to get hundreds of emails at times down when I worked at ASJ. We used to get hundreds of emails, and I used to answer them.
Hey, I count that as one for me. I direct messaged you and you responded back to me.
Yeah, I get a lot of direct messages.
I'm sure you do. You got this crazy white guy from St. Louis is trying to get hold of you.
And I answer them. I don't have a team. I used to have a team. I don't have a team now. So if I don't get back, but you can hit me up on Mr. J Jordan, spelled all the way out, MisterJayJordan, across all platforms, LinkedIn, J Jordan. You can go to centerforsocialgood.com. That's the organization we're building to help nonprofits and build the ecosystem. So if you haven't,
Time Done's out there. Time Done is out there too.
Time Done is definitely out there. Ingrid Archie runs Time Done now that I'm retired. Amazing. Again, you can hit Time Done.
The greatest beard. I see it right here for all of you.
Yeah, it's happening. It's happening. But I'm available. I'm ready. If you need support, man, I'm always going to be an advocate for people who, on the other side of the law.
When are we doing the book? When's the book? Are you working on it?
It's right now. We're writing it now.
All right. We're going to be looking for that. Yeah. I bet it's going to have a good title too. I can't imagine what it would be good. Hey, if anybody else is looking for a book out there, I've got one. Check it out on Nightmare Success, Barnes and Noble. Man, I love what you guys are doing. Leaving reviews on the Apple. Whatever that algorithm thing's all about, it really pumps the show. Really appreciate that. If you want to know anything else going on, check out my website, BrentCassidy.com. Spell it wrong. The cool guys do it with a DY. Mine's a TY. Cassidy. As I used to say when I was writing my emails back and forth from Leavenworth, stay strong. I'll do the same. Jay Jordan, my man, thanks so much for being on the show. Part 1 and 2.
Thanks for having me, Brent.
Nightmare Success, in and out.